All right. Let me start by just saying good afternoon, which feels weird in church to say that, but good afternoon. And we do want to welcome our online audience who is joining us as well. And I just want to start saying thank you to all of you for being here. And now that you're here today, what we expect is for our next all-church meeting in the spring, you all have to be back for that one. We've taken attendance, we've taken notes, we know who's here, and that's the expectation. No, we would love you back for that, but let me just start with a word of prayer, and then we will dive into the conversation that we're going to have today. All right, so let's pray. Heavenly Father, I just thank you so much for your guidance, for your wisdom, and for your leadership, Lord. I think as we have this conversation today, and as we talk about future of Faith Church and some things coming up in our life of our church, I just pray, Lord, that you help us to balance the two things I keep praying about. Help us to balance wisdom and faith, both spiritual gifts, both things that come from you in our prayers, that we would continue to be able to balance those things. Lord, I just pray, too, that as we talk as a church about some next steps, that we just would be focused on what does God want for us and how does God want us to lead and to reach more people for you. And that's what we want, Lord. We want to create more space for more people to know you and your love and who you are. And so help us to be able to do that, Lord. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All right. Well, let me just start with putting people at ease. Nobody's quitting. All right? Nobody's leaving. Nobody's quitting. This is for the record, like that's not how we would do it, but the number of you that kept asking me, like, who's leaving, and then a few of you were like, I was like, we've never done it that way. That's not how we would do it. We just would surprise you on a Sunday morning with it. And you guys were like, you're right. And then you guys were like, you're leaving. And no. So nobody's leaving. Let me just get that off the table and just get that set. As we get started, one of the things I want to do is take advantage of the opportunity with so many of us here today and our board here today. Most of our board is able to make it. Not all of them were able to be here because they have children who have things. Actually, I think there's only a couple board members we've got. But what I want to do is take the opportunity to present to you who our board members are, because I think it's just helpful sometimes as a church to know, like, oh yeah, who are our elders? Who are those people that get elected every year? And in a moment, I'm going to have them stand up. Let me be clear. As I have them stand, it's for you to know who they are, not for you to go to complain to them. All right? Evan is still the complaint department. That's still where you go, is to him. But this is just so you guys have an awareness. So I'm going to ask our board if you guys just each would all stand up so people can kind of see who you are. Let's see. Yep. Okay. Way in the back, and there should be, over here. Thank you, guys. I apologize for Dan. We don't usually let him out. What we're going to talk about today and what we're going to present has been a part of board conversations for the last, not even just several months, for the last few years, has been something that we've been having to discuss and work through some challenges and issues. And what we're going to present today is something that the board itself has voted unanimously to present to you all today. And so we just want you guys to know that and be aware of that. So let's begin with something that I think most of you guys know. But as a church, we've been having some challenges with our roof. I came here to Faith Church 10 years ago. I remember as I came in, one of the things that I was told was that we had just replaced part of our roof to fix some of the water and leaking issues we were having. So I was like, oh, that's sweet. You guys already found the money for that. That's taken care of. I don't have to worry about the leaking roof. That's awesome. And then like a couple of months into me being here, we kept having leaks. And so we called that company. We kept having them come back and kept having them come back. They probably came back 6 or 7 times. The company was a company that had replaced the flat roof on our building. And so they finally told us it's not what we've done. It's the other part of your roof, which makes sense because if you look above you, you can see where just some of the leaks. If some of you are like, I've never looked up there before. Look at that. I thought they did that on purpose. Thought that was a design choice. And so we contacted another company and we said, we've got a leak. We'd like it fixed. And they looked at our roof. They said, we can fix it for you, no problem. I said, what do we need to do? They said, you need a new roof. Now, we weren't completely shocked by that. We actually found when we were investigating that the roof did not have the layer that goes under the shingles. I forget what it's called. Flashing. That's it. Yes, so I knew that. I've been told that so many times and I still forget. And so we knew there was issues, so we weren't shocked that that's the answer. But we tried to be clear with them, like, we're asking you to fix the leak. And they said to fix the leak, you need to replace the roof. So we replaced the shingles. We got flashing up there and all that. And we were like, sweet, there we go. And I kid you not, the first rain after the new roof, and it was leaking. And we were like, oh. So we called that company up, and they came out and looked. And we called them 3, 4, 5 times. They had to keep coming out. And then they told us, we have figured it out. It's your ridge vents are in a bad place. We're going to move them. So we said, okay. And we moved the ridge vents, which we've since had a company tell us are in the worst place we could possibly put them. So we were like, sweet, that's helpful. But we paid to have a company come out, move the ridge vents, same company, keeps leaking. We keep calling them. That company will no longer take our calls. They just were like, and they kept telling us, well, we replaced your roof. And we're like, no, we hired you to fix a leak. And you replaced our roof and moved the ridge vents, and it's still leaking. And so it continued to be an issue and a problem. And so we tried to figure out what do we do about it. In about 2019, it was 2019, the late fall, about this time of year, we were like, we have to figure this out. And so we finally stopped talking to roofing companies. We hired a general contractor. The general contractor, we hired them to tell us what's going on and what do we need to do, what are our options, and give us an estimate of how much it would cost to fix our roof. And so the general contractor came out with fancy equipment that they can see through walls, and they could show us, here's all the places that water is coming in, which was pretty much everywhere. I'm not even going to lie. It was coming in this side, that side, out there, in the women's restroom, at the skylight, in the lobby. It was, and we were like, oh. And so they went around the roof. They showed us every single spot that they thought was part of the cause. And they said, we'll give you our final report in a little bit. And so it took them a while to put it all together, gave us the final report. And nowhere in the final report did it tell us how much it would cost to fix it. And so I had to contact them and say, hey, we need to know what this is going to cost. And they said, yeah, we can't tell you what it's going to cost. We don't know. And I was like, no, we hired you to give us an estimate. We want an estimate. And they said, here's what you'd have to do. They said, there's so many issues with your roof. You'd have to hire us, pay us to tear everything off, which is what would have to happen. We'd have to tear it all off. And then we would look at what's going on inside of it, and then we could give you an estimate from here on out. And you could hire us or hire somebody else, but your roof at that point is off. And so I kept pushing them, and they said, fine, here's what we'll do. We won't put it in writing, but our best guess is that to fix the roof, it's going to cost you between $400,000 and $800,000. And we were like, okay, we've got a number. I don't like that number, but we've got a number. And but then they said, but it's probably closer to the $800,000, and it might be more than that. It just depends, because once we open it up, there could be mold in there, and we'd have to mitigate, and you're going to have to bring a sprinkler system up from the basement because the upstairs was grandfathered in, and you wouldn't be able to do all this work without bringing that up, and that's going to add cost, and then there's going to be another cost, and it kind of kept adding up. And so as a church, we were trying to decide what to do. So that was fall of 2019, but by the time we got those numbers, it was February of 2020. And so we began to talk as a board about what to do, how do we fix this, and then March of 2020 hits, which, if you remember, that was the year that the Final Four got canceled. It's also the year COVID came. And so as a board, we were like, what do we do with this? And we knew there was some potential Band-Aid fixes that we could do that we knew would not solve it long term, but would help for the time being. So we chose the route of going with the Band-Aid fixes because we just said we don't know exactly that we can afford. We don't know what's going on even in the world right now, so this doesn't necessarily make sense. So we did the Band-Aid thing, and that was nice because the Band-Aids actually worked fairly well, and it was cool. Like there was one summer it didn't leak, and I was like, wow, I have not had a summer leading a church without a leaky roof. This is fun, and that was nice. But then it leaked a little bit the next summer, and then this last summer it became a pretty significant issue again, and it sure seemed like, and we even potentially, some of our equipment, we don't know if it just died or if it got water in it or whatnot, but there was a period of time, if you remember, we couldn't do online and stuff. We had to replace some equipment, and we think that it had something to do with that. And so we were like, okay, now we've got to decide what to do again. And so we knew this is not just a roofing company issue. We need to talk to general contractors. And so we have a good friend in the church who's a general contractor, and he said, hey, this is probably not the right thing for me, but I've got friends, and gave us 3 different names of general contractors for us to contact that he would recommend, and said that they should be able to help you. And so we were like, sweet, because I always love when we get recommendations and that kind of thing. And so we reached out to those 3 people. Long story short, all 3 general contractors came back with the exact same answer, which was, your roof's a mess. One of them called it one of the worst designed buildings they've ever seen, for as far as at least the roof is. And all 3 said, if we were to do the job, we wouldn't really be able to quote you. It's going to cost more than what you want to pay. It's going to cost more than what either one of us think, and we're afraid that you won't be happy with us when it's done at the end. And we're busy enough right now that we don't need the job. We don't want the job. Not only will we not do the job, we won't even give you an estimate. All 3 companies. And again, it's not like random companies we called. They all were like, yep, we know this is our good buddy's church, and we love him, but it's still a no. At that point, we had a guy on our worship team who works for a roofing company, and he was adamant that he could help us out. He's like, I'll get my company to help out. And we were like, I think it's bigger than a roofing thing, but if you think, he's like, I think we can help. So he had his boss, the owner of his company, come up. They got on the roof, and they looked at it. And this guy's worked for this company for almost 30 years now. And he said, something happened that I've never seen happen. My owner's up on the roof with me. He's looking at it, and he's like, I told him, like, we got to help out my church. We got to do this. And the owner looked at him and said, we won't do this job. We're not going to do it. We're not going to even bid it. And he told me, he said, in his 25, 30 years of this company, he's never once seen them not bid a job. He's like, we'll always bid it. It might cost you twice as much as it should, but we'll bid it. And they didn't bid it. And so came back to the board, and I said, I don't know what to do at this point. We can't even get somebody to come out and to give us a bid. I'm not even talking about, can we figure out if we can afford this or not, or what's it look like, or do we have to raise these funds? We can't even get someone to give us a bid to fix the roof issue. Now, just to make things more interesting while all that is going on, the Lord was like, hey, let me do something else too. And all of a sudden, when it would rain, we started to get water in the basement through the walls on the other side of the building. So we're like, well, what's going on there? I don't even know what's happening there that has taken place, but all of a sudden we had water coming in through the walls. Not related to the roof, totally separate thing. And so we're like, all right, cool. There's another issue, and don't know what to do with that. So the board began to talk about this, and it just kind of became clear, and it seemed obvious, and we just went, if we can't get anybody to come and to fix this, then we have to move. And as we sat there and said that and felt that, I'll just be honest, like, we all kind of sat in it, and we didn't have a ton of peace around that. Like we didn't love that idea. When we had these roof issues back in 2019, we had begun these conversations actually back then, just because we think it's important to be prepared and to be thinking ahead and that kind of thing. So even back in 2019, we had conversations. If we can't get this fixed or it's too expensive, what if we moved? Would we have to do that? What might that look like? And so we'd begun these conversations, and we found ourselves right back in the midst of them going, this can't get fixed. And we don't even know how much. We don't even know if we can afford it, or would it feasibly even make sense to try to. What if we moved? And what was interesting for all of our board, as we said that, there was a shift that took place in our board meeting. And when it took place was interesting. I had been praying about this and fasting about this for quite a while. This was one of the most stressful things in my life. Like, it was constantly on me. What are we going to do about the roof? How are we going to be able to afford it? What's going to happen? And then, well, what if we can't? Well, what if we move? And is that the right thing? Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? And I don't know. And as I was fasting and praying about it, I felt the Lord one day just simply, and I'll tell you, like, when we had looked at, well, what if we did move? We'd been looking at other places, like, what if we renovated this or renovated that? And I just felt the Lord say to me, and I want to be careful as I say this and as we walk through this, please don't hear me at any point in time saying, God told me this. And the reason why I say that is, as soon as you have conversations like the one we're going to have, as soon as somebody says, God told me, nobody else can have a different thought. Because then God didn't tell you, he told me, or one of us isn't hearing from God, and it doesn't make it viable to be able to have conversation. But I will tell you that as I was praying about what in the world to do, and as I was praying and just going, I think this means we have to move. We can't even get anybody to come and fix this, and this is getting worse and worse. And the skylight out in the lobby has now started to cave in a little bit, so when it rains, we get water that pools and comes in there. And so we're starting to become concerned about structural issues and that kind of thing. And it's like, and I just felt the Lord say, what about State Road? Now, some of you are like, what is State Road? Others of you know exactly what State Road is. So let me try to, as quickly as I can, give you a brief history of State Road for the church. In 2006, about that time, Faith Church had, and it may have started in 2005 when it started, but a developer came to Faith Church and said, we'd love to buy your property from you. I have talked with a few of the people now that were involved in that process to make sure I get more and more of the information to understand it. And the people that were on the building committee at that time and the trustees at that time actually had concerns already about this space. One, how much more could we expand? Two, there are some issues around it that they were concerned about, some water issues and other stuff, and like, could we stay here? Is this viable or not? Without investing a bunch of money. And so when this developer came in and wanted to buy the property, the church prayed about it and considered it. And in the end, the church decided, let's do this. The developer actually went searching for other properties for the church to try to find ones to convince the church to purchase so that they could have this land. And eventually, the developer and the church landed at a property up on State Road. And the church went forward with buying that property, did a capital campaign, and purchased 37 and a half acres on State Road. At some point in this process, after the timing gets fuzzy, and I've heard different things, but at some point in this process, the developer who was going to buy this property backed out and chose not to do it. But the church chose to move forward with buying State Road. And so we actually own 37 and a half acres up on State Road. When that all went down, the senior pastor at that time went on sabbatical, came back from sabbatical and felt the Lord calling him away. This is why my sabbatical was before all of this, not in the midst of it. So no worries. Or if you were coming hoping for that, I'm sorry. Let me introduce you to Sycamore Church. It's over here. And so, where was I at? That's why I shouldn't do tangents just because it was funny. So we own 37 and a half acres. That pastor left, went on sabbatical, came back, felt called away, left. Next pastor came in. Now there's no longer a developer who's offering to buy this property. This is also at the point, if you remember those years when the economy completely tanked and went out, which is why the developer backed out. And so new pastor comes in, there's no developer wanting to buy the property, and the decision was made, we're just going to stay here. When I came 10 years ago, I was told some of the history, didn't know or understand all of it, but we just were like, well, here's working. Well, why would we move? We're going to stay put. The church actually made the decision to put State Road property up for sale, and it's been up for sale for probably the last 6 years, looking for someone to buy it, maybe 5 years. It was a big church vote. There were some that had a really, really hard time when we voted to sell it because, again, think about this. They had done a capital campaign, had raised around $1 million as a church to be able to go buy that property. And now we were saying we're going to put it up for sale instead of moving the church there. During that time, I will tell you, we've had 2 different offers on that State Road property that have fallen through for different reasons, which have been very unique and very interesting. But it continues to sit vacant, continues to have no offers on it. It's still ours. We still own it. So, sit in the board meeting. We're going, do we have to sell? And you can just tell nobody feels peace and nobody feels great about it. And I said, I just wonder, what if there's a vision that the Lord gave the church 17 years ago that now's the time for us to complete it? And I said, what if we move to State Road? And I will tell you that in that moment, our board just collectively, you could almost hear this like sigh of, I think that's it. And suddenly where we weren't feeling any peace, our board just felt significant peace. I don't know any other way to explain it than to say it that way. There just was a sense of peace in the room. And so again, I want you to understand too, this wasn't one meeting. This was several meetings, several conversations, significant time in prayer and in fasting about what to do about this. And so finally, at September's board meeting, we said, I think it's time for us to present to the church that we think we need to sell this property with all of the intention of moving to State Road. And that's what today's vote is going to be about, is about that. Let me, because for some of you, you know exactly where it's at. For others of you, you don't know. And so you're like, what's being said? And here's the challenge as a church. As soon as a church goes into any kind of capital campaign or whatever, man, you always go, if you build it, they will come. And the reality is, if you build it, they will leave. It's just true. There's people like, that sounds messy. Oh, I know they're going to try to raise funds. Now, the funny thing is a lot of times there are those that will leave for the campaign, and then once you get in the new building, they come back. We know what it is that we're presenting and proposing. It scares me to death because I go, I've never done this. I've never walked through this. I don't know exactly how to do it. Ooh, that makes me nervous, but it is where we sense the Lord leading. It is the peace that we feel as we pray and as we fast. So let me tell you where State Road is, because some of you are like, how far away is that? Am I now driving an extra 20 minutes to church? No, not 20, just 19. No, it's actually quite close. And I want to be clear, too, as I present this and show you where State Road is. The vote today is to sell this property. That's the vote. Our intention is to move to State Road. The reason I say it that way is that once we start to investigate more into State Road, what happens if all of a sudden we do soil borings and we find out there's poison in the ground there and we cannot build there? I don't want to have to keep coming back to the church for, now we got to do another thing. Now we got to do another thing, you know. And so it's really just about today selling that, but all of our intention is to move to State Road. That's 100% what our intention is. That's what our plan is. If that were to change, we would 100% be bringing it back to the church to say, hey, something came up with that property. We can't do it, so now here's what we'll do. So let me show you where State Road is. I've got a picture here. Down at the bottom is where Faith Church is at. If you go up Wood Street and turn right on State Road, our State Road property is just past the East Lansing Public Works Department. The reason why I'm telling you to go that direction, there's other options, but you actually can see the property the best when you come from that direction. There's a stoplight right there. Let me give you an idea of what this property looks like. Right here is a little bit zoomed in. You can faintly see a red line up there around our state road, our 37.5 acres. If you know where the MSU FCU buildings are, they are at the stoplight, and so is our property. There's a stoplight right there. We are at that stoplight, and so is MSU FCU just off of that. And then here's an even more zoomed in of what that 37.5 acres looks like. So just to give you an idea. The interesting thing, we've engaged conversation with a realtor just to understand what we might be getting into, to understand things about that property, to understand things about our current property. Some things about that property, I will tell you, in the past, there were some issues with perking. There were some issues with utilities. The neat thing is we've investigated those, and it seems like every door that at one time was closed seems to be opening up over and over and over again. The only utility we're not able to get out there is sewer, the septic, which is weird because East Lansing Public Works is right next door. But if you know how townships work, our property is in DeWitt Township. And so they don't have to let us tap in. And all the hints we've gotten is that they would not let us tap in. There's other reasons behind that. It's not just them being mean or being bad. There's challenges to it. But the good news is that to do a septic field for a church our size, and even with significant expansion, is very doable and not an issue and not a problem. The more important things are all the other utilities, which are all now out there. And so that's good news when it comes to that property. Yeah. So, that's essentially what we're presenting. That's where we're at and what we're asking you guys to prayerfully consider. I've been using, as I talk with some people about this, the parable of the talents to talk about it. The reality is that this property we have here is an incredible piece of property. And in the parable of the talents, there's I don't know why I'm drawing blanks, but a guy who gives talents away, which are not skills and abilities, it's money. And he gives 1 talent to one and 2 talents to another and 5 talents to another, and he tells them that he'll be back. And the person with the 5 talents goes and invests that 5 talents and makes more. The person with the 2 go and invest that 2 talents and makes more. The person with the 1 says, I don't want him to be mad at me. I don't want to lose this and risk it. I'm going to bury it so that when he returns, the owner returns, I can give him back what he gave me to keep safe. And when the owner comes back, he's very pleased with the one with 5 talents that invested it and grew it and got more. And the one with 2 talents invested and grew and got more, and very disappointed with the one that buried their 1 talent. When Faith Church was given this property, and they were given this property, it's a 5-talent piece of property. It's a 5-talent resource, a 5-talent investment that the church has. Because the reality is this, is that if we choose to sell this property, we will not have a problem selling it. It will sell everything that's going on over here and improving and growing and all of that. It will sell, and honestly, it gives us a huge head start in being able to afford a new building, and it's pretty significant. The neat thing, as we talked with our realtor and talked about here, is that the realtor we're talking to said, yeah, absolutely, it would sell here. That would not be an issue. You'll do well with that. But the cool thing is, they said, and the neat thing about where your property is, they said everything right now in Lansing is either going far west side or moving up north. And everything is from Lake Lansing Road north and between Wood Street and Coolidge, which guess what? Is right where that's at. And it almost feels like the Lord keeps going, I'm going to keep putting you in a really amazing space, an amazing place, and move you from where you were around downtown and people all around on Magnolia Street. And the interesting thing is, those of you that were there for the Magnolia building, why did you have to move? water, drainage issues, water in the basement, water from the roof. That's why I had to move. And he said, in faith, we're going to step out and create more space for more people to know Jesus so the kingdom can grow, so we can have different and better children's ministry, and came here. And church, let me tell you, as I think of State Road and the potential of putting up a new building there, one of the challenges that we think we have in this space, there's two big challenges. Well, there's three. Well, there's four. Well, yeah, there's the water on the roof. There's the water in the lower level. There's the fact that, 1989 is when this was built. So that's, a little over 30 years ago. And when this church was built over 30 years ago, children's ministry in the lower level, we have a swear jar at church that if you say basement for the lower level, you have to put $1 in that. We don't really, but that'd be cool. We've talked about that because if you call it basement, it just feels weird. But 30 years ago, to put children's ministry in the lower level, no big deal. In 2023, to take children down to the lower level, you guys understand our culture and the situation that we live in. It's not the most comfortable thing. People don't like it. They don't love it. And we've actually had people that have said, that's why we're not coming back. Another thing that's a challenge is the fact that we desperately want to connect with people and to build community. And today you do that in the lobby. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but our lobby is a hallway. And it's really easy to come in the door and get out, and to come in the door and to get out, which is why we serve food in the Connection Center, because essentially that's our lobby, but we got to work to get people there. And if you're here today, it's probably because at some point you found the Connection Center. And so you got connected and you care enough about Faith Church that you're here today. But the reality is there are so many people that are just in and out and in and out and in and out. And so when we think about a new building, we go, oh my word, we could do children's ministry on the same level. We could do new and better and create a space for our children's ministry there. The community wants to come in. Oh, we could create a lobby with community where it's easier to build a relationship and to do what we want to do. Not only that, we believe that we could create space where the community wants to be in our building and to be with us and a part of us. And this gets us excited to think about. And this space doesn't always work for that in those ways. And so we get excited when we think about this. This isn't just all right, leaky roof, we have to move. We actually really feel the Lord's hand on it, and we actually really feel like it fits who we are and fits our vision, and we can see the Lord using this to help us to minister to our community in some really neat ways. And I'm hopeful to even share some more of the ideas and things that we were thinking about if this were to happen. So that is, that's where we're at. That's what we're presenting. Now here's how this is going to work next, is what I want to do is I want to create space for questions, create space for comments, and allow us to have a conversation as a church body about this. And so our online audience, if you're watching online and you have questions, you can post them right in there. And Morgan is paying attention to that, and she'll raise her hand, and I won't see it because she's no taller than I am, but somebody will tell me it's up. And then she will read your question into the mic. I love you, Morgan. But for anybody else who has a question as well, Pastor Nate is going to come around with a mic. And who else was going to do the mic? Was it Courtney, Evan, somebody? Or just one? I know Ashley's getting up. Good. All right. So they will come around, and so I just want to open it up for questions, comments, thoughts. Let me say this too. I've been telling you we're going to have a vote today. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to make it available for you to vote today. The requirement is not that you have to vote today. What we're going to do is when we're done, you can go into the lobby underneath the skylight. But refrain from jokes. Filter on. Okay. And you'll see Miss Amy out there, and Amy will give you a ballot. We have one that's colored for non-members, one that's colored for members. If you're a member, we'll need to mark your name off, and you will be able to vote today if you want. If you don't want to vote today, then you will give Amy your name and an email address for each person who was wanting to vote later. And she will email you a Google form that allows you to vote absentee, but allows you to stay anonymous, because we want to protect that this is meant to be anonymous. But it also makes it so you can only vote once. And so we had to figure out a system to make that work. Not that I don't for a moment think that our church is trying to ballot stuff. I would never think that of you guys, but I've been in enough of these church meetings that there are some people who think that. And so I don't think that. I love and trust you guys, but Evan thinks that. And so we had to find a way to make this work. So that's how that'll work. But what we're going to do is give you until Wednesday of this week to turn those in, because we want to give you time to pray, fast, consider, and that kind of thing. So with that, let me just open it up and just say, are there questions or comments that anyone would like to make? And Morgan's already got one.
Do you have my... So... One. Okay. Yeah. Hey, guys.
Can you just say it loud? If you say it loud, I'll just repeat it.
Yeah, I'll try. Okay.
There it is.
Oh, here we go. Okay, so if we sell Lake Lansing property, where will we hold services? In the meantime, in a tent on the new property, I am down for a tent revival.
I love it. Tent revival. All right. Yeah. So there's a lot that goes into this. There's a lot of timing things that are challenges that I'm working. I would be working with our denomination and our regional leadership and others, our realtor and all of that and stuff with. But the hope would be this. The deal the church had in the past was that the developer was going to purchase the property and give the church 2 years to get out, which would give time to go build. Since I've been here at Faith Church, every single year I think I've been here, or almost every single year. We'll say almost so that I'm not unintentionally lying. So almost every single year I've been here, we have had somebody offer us money either for the whole property or for frontage or a combination thereof or either one. The most recent offer we had was the same thing. They said, we know you'd have to go get a space. We'd be willing to give you 2 years to build and get out, and then we would come in, but we would buy it from you before that. So that would be the hope, would be to have a plan like that. Yeah.
How much is this property here worth?
So I will give you what our realtor has given us as the number that we would list it at if we were to list it, if this were to be approved. That does not mean that's what it would sell for. You also still have realtor fees and that kind of thing. The amount that I'll give you is their best guess based on other properties selling, but commercial real estate is not anything at all like housing. Housing, it's much easier to kind of guess and know and find comparables. In commercial, it's very challenging to find comparables that are accurate. So when I give the number, which is no big deal, because if this gets approved and we were to sell, everybody could find the number. I just don't want you guys going, well, you said this much, but then you sold it for that much, or you said this much, but then it sold for more. It could sell for more, it could sell for less. The number that we're being recommended to list it at is $5.25 million.
And then I'm assuming that 5.25 would be used towards the cost of building our new structure.
100%, absolutely. Yep, that would be the plan, is that all of that would go straight towards new construction. New construction is incredibly expensive. I will tell you right now, that's not enough. So we're working on what is the debt load that we would be willing to go and to take on as a church. The good news is right now we have no debt, as well as it would absolutely mean that as a church we would go into a capital campaign, which is where we reach out to our congregation and say, hey, what and how much can we raise? So, oh, good. Oh, thank you, Val. Yeah, go ahead. Yep. So actually, Larry, if you would use the mic, that would actually help me, because I couldn't hear you.
Because online needs to hear too. Sorry.
Yep.
How much are they going to give us up front?
So those are questions that I don't know the answers to just yet, because we haven't put it on the market. We actually can't put it on the market till the church votes for it. So we're trying to investigate and know what we can. And there's different ways that could work. Also, to do this, even if it doesn't all come up front, we would get a loan, which we would look at WIF, which is called Wesleyan Investment Foundation, which is through our denomination, which does stuff like this and specializes in it. But we would also talk to some banks and credit unions, and we're fortunate as a church that a lot of churches, banks, and credit unions wouldn't necessarily look at, but because of what this property is worth, because of what the state road property is worth, and that kind of thing, we actually are not a bad investment for them. So even if they don't give us all of it up front or enough of it up front, we would use a loan to get there until the day comes that and that's all details we'd have to work out and figure out. Trust me, that's all the stuff that like stresses me out about it, but this is how these things work and operate is that. So we'd have to figure that out as we go. I don't have an answer today for that though. Yep, let's see.
On the state road property, have you guys done any estimates of cost for a new church?
Yes, we have done a rough estimate of cost, and we're still working through what that would be. It's a very rough estimate, but we're probably looking at that cost would probably be between $6 to $7.5 million, $6 to $8 million. The first number we got was 7 to 9, and we were like, what if we don't do this? And what I will tell you is that it'll be more about we're going to pray, ask God to give us the vision of what it's going to be. Then we're going to use wisdom and look at what does this property sell for? How much debt are we willing to do? How much do we raise as a church in a capital campaign? And what that number is what we will do. And so if that means that the new building is 24,000 square feet or 20,000 square feet, if that means the new building has a gymnasium or that's phase 2, if that means that there's a slide and a bathroom in Kirk's office or there's not, it all depends on that. And so what we will do is we're going to be very committed to, you can't go into this and put yourself into trouble. We have to be very careful, very smart. And so we're gonna make sure that we do that well and with that in mind. So, yep. Let's see. Got one over here. Yep. Oh, one here. Okay. And then Val, once done there, we've got one back here too.
Hi. I know there's an endowment fund here, and I don't know exactly how that works or how that's earmarked, but can that play into this at all?
So the endowment has always been incredibly generous in every way, shape, or form that it can with Faith Church. The endowment must stay an endowment. So it's not going to be, we could have conversation with the endowment about different things, and I will just tell you that we've already had some conversation with the endowment. They've already blessed us in some incredible ways. But I would say that from here on out, the endowment needs to stay the endowment that is doing things to be able to continue to exist as the endowment and give money and bless ministries and partners of Faith Church. And that from here on, it would be us going, how do we do this as a church? And I like it that way because our mission statement is we live to give ourselves away so others will come to know Jesus. And the endowment is like one of the biggest muscles of giving that we have as a church to be able to live that out and do that. And so, good question, but yeah, that would not be something that we would expect to go and ask them. So, yep. And we had a hand back here.
Thank you, Pastor. Question, how many acres do we have here right now?
So right here is just under 7 acres.
Has there been any consideration as far as traffic on the state property? You've got a monstrous hill that you got traffic coming over. So when you have people leaving and coming and going, where would that entrance be on State Road?
Yeah, good question. I don't have an answer to that. We've not gotten that far down the road. I will say that that's where we would work with city and township planners to make sure that we do it in a way that is feasible. The stoplight is right there. We're on the corner of it, so I don't know if that's an option to be able to even go into the stoplight or what that would mean or look like. I don't know that, but we will absolutely would take that into consideration when trying to decide, hey, where's the drive at, and how does this work, and what's this look like? But that's a good question. At this time, I don't have an answer to it. I think we can figure it out in a safe way, but that's a good question.
Another thought, based on your history of church of this size, what do you feel that we would be able to raise as far as capital is concerned?
Yes, great question. So that we have begun to investigate. I have met with, so the question was, a church our size, what do we feel like we could raise? And so I have met with 4 different capital campaign companies multiple times to work through some of this. We have landed at which one we would use if we go down this road. Actually, we've already landed and signed, because here's the reality is, if we don't sell here and move, we're going to have to do a capital campaign to be able to fix the roof here. I mean, that's just the way it is. We can't, there's no more, there's not any more Band-Aids for us to be able to do. So this roof has to get fixed. That doesn't even address the basement leaking issues. Our church our size, what we've been told to expect, and if this gets approved, we take the next step of the capital campaign, which is a more in-depth study of our giving and that kind of thing. They can give us a better idea of the number, but every company we talk to, what they've kind of told us is, you should be able to raise at least 600,000. You're likely to raise 900,000 to $1 million, and a really good campaign would be 1.2. Every campaign is different. You never know. When we got the endowment, nobody knew that these 2 little old ladies that the church had been helping out and serving for years were sitting on $1 million. Never would have known or guessed that. So you never know, but based on giving history, these companies are pretty darn good at saying, and they always go, there's an element of faith and an element of facts, and we're trying to help understand, here's the facts, but faith can always increase that. So don't hear me, I'm not saying we could raise 2 million, sure, but until the Lord shows us that 2 million's there, we're going to go based off of what the experts who have done this hundreds of thousands of times can show us. Here's your size and your giving, here's what's likely. And that's the amounts that we're looking at, is somewhere in that range. Yep.
There's an online question.
Okay.
Someone who may or may not be Evan wants to know if we're voting Kirk out.
How many times can you fire a guy? All right. I saw a hand here, and then I know we've got another one here.
With it being 37 acres and we're only on 7 now, has there been a thought of parceling the property into 2 and selling part of it and using the proceeds of that to help with the costs?
Yes, absolutely. So as of right now, I will say I want to be careful not to do too much until this vote happens, but I don't know that we would sell. We're more interested in doing a lease. There are some challenges with parts of the property being buildable and not buildable. It limits what you can do. I'm not prepared to say like with who, but there's actually is somebody we're having conversation with that is interested in whatever acreage that we don't use, that they would be interested in leasing that. And so there's a possibility of that. I think that's absolutely something we are looking at to help raise the capital that we might need to be able to do this, because we don't need all 37 and a half acres. However, it's too premature to say anything for sure, but that's something we're considering and weighing, yeah.
What does a capital campaign look like at this church? Is it a faith promise thing, or how do you do it?
I have no idea.
The reason why I ask is because, I've been in churches that are no longer churches anymore because they did a faith promise.
Yeah.
And then they changed the color of the hymnal, and a bunch of people that had promised the money got angry and left the church, or, you know how that is.
I promise not to change the color of the hymnals. No, it's a good question. Let me say this. Here's what I can tell you. With every company that I talk to, and with the company that we selected, there's a reason why we went from 4 down to 2 pretty quick based on some of the terminology and my conversations with them. Let me say this. Part of the conversation I had with those companies about faith, about capital campaign, is I said, I will not do a campaign that is just we're trying to raise money. It has to be it has to be spiritual. It has to be about God and Jesus and learning what does he tell us and how do we respond. To me, it has to be, what I want it to look like is to challenge our church to seek God, to hear from God, to obey God and to thank God. And this church, I mean, we just preached on it today, right? God doesn't use guilt and shame. We will never use guilt and shame. I'm not going to, how do I say this? We're not going to send collection notices. We're not going to be like, hey, you pledged this much and you're only here. Like, it's just not who we are as a church. I won't let a capital campaign change who we are. But a capital campaign is something that will probably be necessary if we go down. No matter what, it's necessary. Whether we stay or whether we go, we're going to have to enter into one. But no matter what, we won't use guilt and shame to do it. And it'll be challenging our congregation, our church, to spend time with the Lord in prayer and to say, God, what do you want me to do? How do you want me to respond? And then now I respond in that way. And it's about me hearing from God and being obedient to God and nothing else. I will also tell you, as we go through a capital campaign, any of you that have talked with me about money in the past, about stuff like this, know this. I do not know who gives how much. I have no idea. I don't ever see names. I don't do that. I don't play that game. I don't want to see names. I don't know. When we go down this road, that will not change. I will not see names. I will not know who gives how much. That's just not, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't want that. I want to continue to lead the church, hearing from the Lord, and not be having to make sure I'm not motivated by something else. So I don't know exactly what it'll look like, but I can tell you some of the things that I know will be in it, some things that won't be in it. But yeah, I've never done it before. So yeah, I reached out to a buddy of mine that's done one, and he and I have a meeting, to kind of talk about, hey, what does that look like? Yep. Okay, we've got one down front, one in the back, we got one back there, and one over here too. So we got 4 more, and that's not all. We'll
I wanted to get a little more information about our present roof. So are there parts of this roof that are about 34 years old, or have we ever had it re-roofed?
So oddly enough, and I'll look at, if I get any of this wrong, Ken, feel free to correct me or anybody else that knows it better. So the part back here was built in 1989, and I do not believe we have ever replaced that roof. Okay. I
So
don't
this-
believe we have.
This is 20 then. in
Oddly
here.
enough, that's the one not leaking. This is the one leaking, and this then would have been done in what year would this have been done? 1991, 3, what? 91, 92 is what I'm hearing? Yeah.
So,
Okay.
So this is shingles up here.
This is shingles up here, yes.
What is the lifetime of, I'm thinking about re-roofing after 20 years or 25 years on my house.
I can tell you who not to use afterwards.
That's fine, but I guess I'm not understanding, why, so this is like normal maintenance of shingle roofs for how many years?
Yeah,
Is it?
you would think, the number of times we've had companies and multiple companies out here looking and telling us and stuff, it's a multitude of issues.
Yeah,
It's the way the building was designed, some of the places where it's coming in, and
Right,
I don't know little things, but it's
maybe flashing and then.
not just flashing, it's even like a little decorative
the-
thing that was done, but then that created a gap, and we think there's water coming in
Right.
there, so we've did solar seal where the fascia meets other parts that had been being caulked, and I think well-meaning people had caulked it one way, and another well-meaning person caulked it with different caulk, which then doesn't stick and adheses. I didn't know that. I now have learned that. I wasn't one of them, but I would have been if I'd gone up there because I wouldn't know. We've been using solar seal to kind of fix a lot of the leak places and stuff and that kind of thing. It's not about the shingles wore out. It really is about the design and the way it was done. And it's about anytime you have flat roof that meets not flat roof
Right. Flashing
invites
and-
issues, and
Yeah.
and ours is just really, really, really bad. So yeah. Yeah, water comes in, comes down, comes through the walls. We've had bubbles of water on the walls, and yeah.
Right, okay.
Yep.
sorry, I just didn't understand about what maintenance had gone on with the roof and how long we expected to get more life out of a roof.
Yes.
You know, and so if we didn't have if we had leaking problems that, you know, just were normal as part of it's time to do maintenance and do a tear off and re-shingle and
Yeah.
then flash and seal and so on. It's just sort of the normal life of the building.
Right, and if that's all it was, we had those things done before we got to the extreme of okay, replace it. Like, and it was replaced. What? We did this one 5-6 years ago, more than 7.
The whole thing was replaced 5 or 6 years
This
ago?
part was, and from the day we replaced it, it was still leaking. That was the conversation we kept having with the roofing companies.
Okay.
Going, we hired you to fix the leak. You said this would do it. It's not. So, yep.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Basement leaks too. I knew that. Has from the beginning. Didn't know that. So that's interesting. Yep. And it still is. Yes. Yep. Yep. For our online audience, as much as Dawn thinks that she's loud enough, she doesn't need a mic. Essentially what she said is there is water coming in several places all around the basement, and we've had to actually throw away shelving and different things because of mold and stuff. And so, yeah. All right, we've got a mic, yeah.
As far as leasing the other property, would we be able to make enough money off that? And how far would that money go towards fixing the issues at this building? Would a regular income from that be able to pay a loan if we got a loan to fix the issues?
Yeah, so right now, that property is up for sale, and the amount that it's for sale for is $925,000. The last amount that was an accepted offer on it was $875,000. If that were to sell, but it's been a challenge, and it's unlikely to sell because of. So when you talk about the septic issue, for a church our size, from talking to an architect, a church our size, septic-wise, will use roughly the same amount as a family of 6 would in a week, because we're not here all the time, and not everyone that comes here. And there's no showers, and there's no cooking, and there's no, and so. But if you were to be an apartment complex, which is what one of the developers wanted to buy the property to put in there, they have to be able to tap in. They can't do just a septic system and that kind of thing. So we're limited what we can do. The one party that currently is possibly interested in leasing, part of it is they're interested because of us being there. Versus if we're not, then that interest could still be there, possibly not. But it would not, honestly, with where we're at right now, with the amounts, I mean, we can't even get anybody to give us an estimate on this, but our best guess, based on what we've heard before, is we're looking at probably north of $1 million to be able to fix, and that would be just the roof that doesn't deal with the basement leaking and possible foundation issues and stuff like that. So I don't think it would be enough, but it's an interesting thought, and it's one that we had weighed and considered. And if we'd sold State Road, then that might have been an option. But yes. Yeah, online.
Oh, okay. What about using steel over the shingled roof?
Yeah, the challenge is that it won't fix the structure issues we already have. That itself would not get rid of mold and that kind of thing, and not take care of those issues. So probably not an option. There would be other things that we have to do. So yeah. I've got a hand raised here. I've got another one here. I know we had another one here. We got one up front too. So we'll try to get to everybody. Yeah. Who's up? Who do we got? Okay, we're coming down here. Okay.
I was just curious how much money you think we would have to spend to fix this temporarily to stay here for the 2 years it would take to build.
Good question. So I'm hopeful that the Band-Aid fix that we just recently did, the last time we did it, it bought us a couple of years. My hope is that that buys us the couple of years. We probably could do it 1 to 2 more times if we had to. My guess is every time we do it, it'll buy us less time. But that's that. I mean, it's honestly it's a relatively cheap Band-Aid. It's buying several tubes of solar seal and putting it around to all the spots that are leaking. So it's a relatively inexpensive Band-Aid as long as it keeps working. So, yep.
What structural issues are like for sure documented, and then what's the source of it? Is it a structural engineer, or is it one of the?
It's from
people
so
come in?
much water being in the ceiling and roof. So like I said, so if you were to go up and walk on our roof up there, there are several soft spots because of how much water has been there. The skylight has caved in a little bit, but what it does, it creates now that water pools there. So for our understanding from the last time we had somebody up there that would know, we're not in danger right now of something caving in. However, that will become the danger if something's not done.
Right.
And so when I say structural issues, that's what I mean. It's not enough to just put a tarp over the whole building and then no more water gets in it. It's like, no, there's still structure issues that we have to deal with, as well as the reality is we're fairly confident that there's probably at least some mold that would have to be mitigated and taken care of too. So, yeah, common mold, not black. Yeah, thank you.
Is it worth hiring a structural engineer to come in and give us like somebody who has eyes on the wood and beams and everything?
So when we hired the general contractor in 2019, that's a part of what their whole report was, which is a part of what we're basing all of this on, is what they came back and gave us and told us. They walked it, they looked at it. They're not just like a house builder. It's a commercial contractor who does. They had a structural engineer who came out and he did that, and that's part of what is leading us down the path of going, okay, this is where we're at and what needs to happen. Yeah, yep. See hand here. We've got one in the middle too. After that.
Something that I feel compelled to just say is that for a lot of people in this room, you may not have been in the basement in a long time if you're not a Faith Kids volunteer or have little ones. It's much nicer up here than it is down there. We don't have windows. It does smell of water and mold often. To try and take a baby who's been in the nursery and take them downstairs, they're terrified. I work in the 2s and 3s rooms. They scream. They don't want to leave their parents. It is kind of scary. It's not conducive to the type of learning that we need to engage with those children, and they're not here to give their opinion. So I just wanted to kind of put that in. I know they're not paying for a new building either, but we owe it to our kids to put them in the best possible environment to learn to love Jesus.
Yeah. Thank you, Melly. Yep. Yep.
This whole area, this is an area that I guess originally was an apple orchard, but flooding is in the basements and that kind of thing is something that residents of the neighborhood behind us deal with all the time. And so we are not exempt from that just because we're a church, which can explain that. It's a neighborhood issue. Mm-hmm. The second thing I want to say is when we bought that property at State Road, it was with the vision that we could do an initial build and we could expand. It would have space for us to do that. And at that time, I also remember there's an area of that would not be buildable, but it would be suitable to put in some kind of a neighborhood playground that could be a draw for our church to service the children of the community.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And that's part of what our vision would be if we were to go and move there, would be to be doing things that are drawing the community around us, serving the community, meeting community needs, and that kind of thing. 100% is what we would love to do, create space for that. Yeah.
A couple things. If you start working on this, I've worked on enough things. I'm no expert by far, but every time I've worked on something that I think I got a simple fix, the farther you go into it, the more you find. And I got an idea that there'd be a lot more up there than what they even know about right now.
And that's part of why the range of cost in 2019 was so large, and we know now post-COVID, all of that is significantly more expensive too.
My second thing is, who would okay the final blueprint?
You're asking me a process thing that I don't know if I know the exact answer to it. I believe that the final blueprint, honestly, what it would be, would probably be that there would be a building committee put together that then would play the role in that, and eventually it would probably come to the board for final vote, but the whole picture and drawing would be presented to the church, and my goal would be to have pretty significant drawings and stuff to present to the church before we get too far. It doesn't mean to be final drawings, but so you guys have an idea, sketches and stuff of what's going to happen and what's going on. Yeah.
I want to say too, even though it's nicer up here, I pray every time it rains that the sky doesn't fall on us, because that's my phrasing. The sky is falling. There's literal sky on the stage up there from it chipping down and falling, and poor Don, who stands on that side stage, and Joe, I pray that it doesn't do anything. It's actually fallen during service sometimes, so.
I have a lot of Band-Aids in my toolbox, but most of them I have to use on my body. But
who gave him the mic?
God has a way of making us do something sometimes. Most of you know that I have a cabin out at a campground, and years ago, when I first went there, they had a old tabernacle. They put air conditioning, they put the windows up on the side, and there was always talk about building a new tabernacle. And next year there was talk about building a new tabernacle. God knocked it down one winter, and we built a new tabernacle. I don't know the answer. I'm not saying the answer, but I think we're in a predicament where it's time to do something. I don't have all the answers. But I have a God that does. And that's my prayer.
Thank you, Dar. For our online audience, if you didn't quite get that, what Dar said is he said, I don't have all the answers, I don't know all the answers, but God does. And that's his prayer. And I appreciate that. Even just bringing us back to just making sure, too, as we walk down this and through this, that our focus is on him and him first. And there's a lot of details that are going to have to be worked out and figured out and that kind of thing. But keeping the focus on him. Thank you, Dar. Yep. Morgan, do we have an online question?
From all the information that's been presented, in addition to what I've been able to observe with the ceiling stains from the water damage over the past few years, my concern is that even if we re-engineer a fix for the roof, we are still in a building that has been compromised. As much as I would love us to stay here, I believe that building new and moving might actually be the most responsible solution. Sorry, I thought that was a question, not a comment.
Comments are fine too. Comments are fine too. This is meant to be open, so, yep. Do you have?
Yes, for online you do.
We'd like our online people to be able to hear you.
Online people are listening too.
Has anyone?
If you could sing your question.
Sing it.
Oh, no, I don't sing. You don't want me to sing. I'm like you. They tell me at church years and years ago that I know all the words to all the hymns, but I can't carry a tune.
Yeah, that's why we sit in the front row.
Amen.
Yeah.
Okay. Has anyone ever considered tearing this building down and rebuilding on this ground?
So good question. We actually, back in 2019, when we were beginning these conversations, we actually hired an architect to look at 2 other locations that were available that we thought could be potential possibilities to renovate. And as well as we actually hired that architect, we asked them to look at our current space and to say, hey, if we wanted to stay here, what would it look like to not just fix the roof, but to turn this into the space that we would want it to be? And so we said, be creative with what you come up with. And so the architect, we walked through some of the things. We said we need, bathrooms, so there's not just one toilet for the men upstairs. We said we want a lobby space and that you have to walk through the lobby. We walked through all different stuff. We said we'd like to bring as much of kids ministry upstairs as we can. So they looked into what would it take, what would it cost and look like to turn this into the lobby and put some kids ministry spaces up here, expand out that way a little bit with some kids ministry spaces, move some of the parking lot, take that ceiling and raise it up and turn that into the worship center and make it conducive to that and to increase bathroom sizes. And the number they came back with in 2019 pre-COVID was that would cost us around $5 million to do. So, which you're like, oh, well, hey, that's cheaper than the building. And it is. It's just you don't get to sell this land to do that. That's the challenge. Yep.
When we went through this before, we already had drawings of what it's going to look like. We've had core samples that were taken. Is all that for naught, or we can still go back and use some of that?
Yeah, so as much of that we can find, we will go back and use in the sense of soil borings and stuff like that. If anybody knows where those are at, let me know. We've been looking, and yeah, they got wet. We do have the previous blueprints and that kind of thing, but what I will say is that in 2023, we're a very different church than we were in 2007. And so we probably wouldn't reuse that. But any of the information that we have about the property and that kind of thing, we absolutely will use so we don't have to reinvest more money than what we need to. But, yep. Yeah.
So your church is your community and vice versa. You guys have said that. How much of an impact do you guys want us to have on the potential new building, whether that's, the design, the build, how it looks going in, painting, volunteering, and stuff like that? And then also, how transparent will you guys be with us on what's going good about the new building if we go there, or what's going bad and stuff?
Yeah, so let me answer the part that I heard, and then I think I'm going to miss part of it, so ask it again when I miss it. Because there's one word you said that stood out to me that I was like, oh, I want to address that. The question was about transparency, and I've heard from a few people that said that in the past you have felt like when we went down this road before, things weren't always transparent. And what I will tell you is, as a leader, I've never known, well, I was going to say that. I've never known a leader that I respect that tries to not be transparent, right? Our goal throughout this process will to be as transparent as we possibly can be. That doesn't mean there won't be. There might be things that we find out or know, and then we have to figure out, how do we do this? How do we go through this? How do, and that kind of thing. Or there could be things that we know that we go, that doesn't necessarily have to go to all the church. But we want to be transparent. We don't want to hide this. There's a reason why some of you, as I've shared with other people leading into this, we had a few people that couldn't be here today that I had meetings with to be able to walk them through this and stuff and that kind of thing. One of the questions I got asked was about Otto. Back when we looked at, hey, what if we moved to Otto? It wasn't because of the roof. That was just me driving and feeling led and just asking a question. And if you remember, what we did then with the church is we just asked it of the church and said, what do you guys think? And invited you guys into praying and that kind of thing. It would be that kind of transparency that I want to have, to where you feel a part of it and you feel included and you feel like you know what is going on, where we constantly would show, like, here's updates and here's where we're at, or here's pictures and here's this and here's that. It doesn't, as a church, I think one of the things you've learned about us too, I mean, our staff has stood up here and been as authentic as possible and shared about struggles and issues and challenges in our lives. Like, our desire is to be authentic, to be real, and be transparent. it'd be no different as we walk through this. That would still be our desire. I can't promise perfection on that, but I can promise you what our heart and our intent is. So that's the answer to the transparency thing. I think the other was it about like how involved with what it would look like in that?
Yeah, your community is your church, and how us as your community would be involved, the
Yes.
impact of it, just stuff like that.
Our hope and desire would be that we're being honest about what are some community needs and needs that we can meet. What are things that we can do? How can we use our space to do that? And so we want to be aware of our community and to use it for that. We want to be a church where our community says, if we lost them, that would hurt. We don't want to lose that church. And the challenge is in most communities, most people, when a church shuts down, they don't even notice. It doesn't matter. And so we want to be a church that is impacting our community and serving our community. And so we want to be aware of those needs and find ways to meet. And we can't meet all of them, but to meet those needs and involve that in the process of what does this look like? What's the building look like? Yeah. Other questions or comments?
There's an online question. Do the potential buyers of the current building understand that there are structural issues?
The chances are that whoever buys this is going to tear down the building and put up something completely different. We would absolutely, it would be a requirement for us to divulge, to let them know that, we have to, inform of what information we have and that kind of thing. And we would absolutely do that. But that's not the likely purpose of this space. So, yeah.
Not to be the downer, but not only do we have water issues, Kirk kind of stepped over the fact that we have major issues with our electrical. I mean, the lights that we have on in here right now, that's it. We can't even hook up our crock pots when we come in for missional communities and all of the outlets in the connection center or even in the kitchen because we might blow the fuse or set this church on fire. So just because we fix one problem doesn't mean that we don't have another one and another one and another one, because there are several. There are many things that we are lacking in our church, unfortunately. And that doesn't mean that me, the emotional one, because I get emotional about it. This is my home church. These are where the memories have been created. It's our home, and we all have to move sometimes. When we're growing up, we have our home, and we become teenagers and go to college, and we get our home with our spouse or significant other. And then sometimes our parents don't stay in those homes. They leave that home that you grew up in. But it's the people that you created those memories with. It's the people that you have the connection with, that you make lifetime connections. We have that here, and we can carry that on someplace else. We have each other, and we can do this together. That's what it's about. We chose this place because of us. And I'm not knocking our pastors, don't get me wrong. But I learned the hard way, and I've told many people this. Hopefully you don't just choose your church because of pastors, because pastors have callings to go other places. We chose this because we are the unity of the church, of the people. We are children of God, and we belong together.
Thanks, Debbie Downer. Dawn. Thank you, Dawn. That was very nice. It's very kind. Yeah, we got one back here.
Simple question.
Yeah.
Would we have an organ again?
Right after my slide and bathroom. No. You know what's funny though? You ask that, and I know you ask it in jest and then a little bit of seriousness too. I mean, the funny thing is the reality is organ is coming back into music. If you go listen to modern day music, you hear organ type things from time to time within it and that kind of thing. It actually wouldn't be the end of the world if we actually did have an organ. I don't know if we have an organ player. But there is, it will not be, oh, Cynthia, good to know. I will not promise anything that would be in the space or building at this time. I will promise that we will take into consideration a priority on our kids and children's, the next generation, a priority on space to have community and connect with one another in space that would serve our community. Those would be priorities, but I can't promise what they would be or look like, but yeah. All right. I'd like to bring us to a close just out of respect for you guys this time, but I don't want, this is such a significant thing, I don't want anyone to feel forced to be done. So, but is there one or two more before we wrap up? If you have to, I'm not sure if you're making a comment about the state of the land or the state of the preaching. I don't know. Yeah, I think I saw. Yeah.
I'm just basically wanting to reiterate what Don said. We showed up here, gosh, a little over 2 years ago, and we didn't stick around because of the building. It's because of the people in this room. So I don't think this building has any significance whatsoever in what we do as a church, as a community of Christ followers. So,
yep. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, we've got one here.
Just piggybacking off what he just said, as you all know, we're fairly new here, and we were invited. I knew Amy Heeshen, and she had always talked about her church. We came to Michigan. We saw Faith Church advertised at NCG Theater. Kind of went in and out the air. We were new, navigating through churches, and COVID happened 2020. We've been here longer than that, but 2020 happens. And I was actually, I did not, no one liked it, but I was like, what is God doing with this? What is the transition that he's leading us with? And I remember where we were, I was already telling our family, it's time for a move. And we didn't know where. We were trying to figure it out. We were doing online church. And Amy, I was meeting with her, and she happened to mention, hey, you know, my pastor's looking for certain individuals to give certain testimonies. And I was like, sure, no problem. I came alone. I came and said, I'll come. I remember going home and saying to my husband and 2 kids, and being black in mid-Michigan and in Hazlet is tough. And I remember looking and saying, that congregation looked nothing like us. That congregation age is more different than ours. There's nothing about Faith Church from the outside that would say we're going to be okay. But it was from what was inside. And I remember saying, I don't know where God is going to leave us, but one thing for sure is we belong to Faith Church. And I remember saying it's not because of the dynamics. I said, don't look at that. Don't look at the demographics. Don't look at anything. And I said, but I told my husband and 2 children, you have to trust me on this one. I was like, what's there is what's important. And like Don said, it's the heart. And you have our full support, that where you go, we go. And I don't know where God is leading our family personally, but the one reason why we are here is because of the heart we felt when we came. Nothing looks like us. It could have looked dangerous to us, as a matter of fact. It could have looked risky to us. It could have looked like, yep, we're going to have to pack our bags and run. Because in today's America, in today's world, we don't know where we're safe. We don't. But hearts will always be the most genuine place. And you will always feel somebody's heart when it's genuine. And here is where we found it. So that's what I'd say. So thank you for that, because it's what you said that made me say, now it's time for me to speak my word too. And yes, that's our story. You all have been hard. I don't know each and every one of you all, but the leader, when you have a leader who you know is compassionate and who sees everyone and who has a heart to serve, and you will know the servers, you will know that. And I said we have to follow whoever is willing to serve, not just say I am a leader, but to also serve and lead through service. And that we found in you. So where you are, you set the tone. And you set the foundation that makes it safe for everyone. And that's what we got out of this. And I said to the kids and my husband, you have to trust me on this one, because what I feel is a leader who will keep a congregation where they should be, focused on Christ.
Thanks. All right. I mean, I'm comfortable wrapping it up there. I just want to make sure. Is that a hand or not? Just through your hair? Yep. Okay. Yeah. All right. I'm going to close this in prayer in a moment, but first let me just walk you through what'll happen next. Is that Amy will be out here at the Connection Center table with ballots. I would like every one of you to vote. Again, I don't care if you're a member or non-member. Somebody asked me, like, well, does the non-member votes count? Yeah, they do, because it communicates to us we don't push membership here. I love it when people say, I want to become a member, because it says we believe in what you're doing. It doesn't say you agree with everything. I don't agree with everything, and I'm in charge. Like, you know, and so, like, it doesn't say you agree. It just says we're in and we're bought in, but we don't push membership, and we don't, like, I like it when people are, but it doesn't have to happen. But we want to hear from our people. And if you're here, you consider yourself one of our people. If you're online, you consider yourself one of our people. And so we want to hear from you. So member and non-member alike, yes. Now, when it comes to official in the sense of can we or can't we and the percentages, yeah, the member votes are the ones that matter for that. But I'll just tell you, like, let's say that the member votes say yes and all of the non-member votes say no. We'd have to stop and go, wait a second, well, where's our church at then? That would absolutely make us pause and stop and that kind of thing. So they do matter. They do count. It communicates to us. And so we really want both to vote. Again, you do not have to vote today. If you take a ballot today, though, all right, then you have to vote with that ballot, because we can only let everybody have one, all right? So you can either vote today, or anytime this week, you can come back in, drop that ballot off, or, Evan, where's Evan? Evan's doing in there. But do we have one of the boxes? I'm hoping you can hear me. Evan? Do we have a box that we have right? Okay, it's there. So if you want to drop ballot in, there's a box out there. It looks like one of our give boxes, but it does not say give. Also, then what we will do this week is we will move that box to outside. Ooh, there's a step. Outside of these doors here, underneath the awning, so it'll be outside, so that you could vote at any point in time between now and Wednesday and come and drop that off. All right. If you want to vote absentee or just through online, you can do that as well. Again, you'll have to get an email to Miss Amy. You'll get one ballot per email that she gets. That's not about us collecting your information. It's about making sure there's only one. And so she will send you then a link to the Google document that you just fill out and turn in, and that allows you to do that. For our online audience, if you're not able to be here or come and get a ballot at any point in time this week, you can email us at hello@wearefaithchurch.com, and we will get that to you through that as well. So I think that's it. Yeah. I have no idea, because I'm colorblind. I can't sing, and I'm colorblind. I know they're two different colors. I think that sounds right, blue and tan. Amy will know. She'll make sure you get the right one. That letter, yep. Because she'll have a list. She has a list there of all of our members, and so she'll actually highlight that name as they go through, and you can just be like, oh, I'm a member, and then she'll find your name, or I'm not a member. So, all right. Okay, let me pray for us. Heavenly Father, I thank you for what Dar said. We may or may not know exactly what to do and exactly what the future looks like, but you do. And we just rest in that knowledge. We rest in that and just trust you that you do know, Lord, that you know what's coming. You know what's ahead. You've already seen it. You've already figured it out. You've already planned for us. And Lord, you know, for me, that's part of what excites me about this, is to think that there was this vision 17 years ago and that maybe we get to bring that to completion and to fruition, Lord, that we get to take on this vision this church has had and take next steps with it. And Lord, I just pray that you would just help each and every one of us to sense a leading from you and a guidance as we pray about this. Give us a peace one way or the other, and help us to follow how you lead us, Lord. We just pray that would be true, that would be the case. Above all else, we want to glorify your name. We want to build your kingdom and see more people come to know you. And it's in Jesus' name that we pray, and all God's people said, amen. thank you all for being here. Thank you for spending the last hour and a half with us. I appreciate how much you love your church. And please go ahead and get ballots or get signed up for absentee or whatever you may choose and vote. Thanks, guys.